Very warm welcome to everyone, and a particularly warm welcome, Sandeep, to you. Thank you for doing this on a day off, which I did not realize earlier. So,
No worries, Alok. Thanks very much for inviting.
truly appreciate. Um, Maybe just some context to the discussion. First of all, the way we design these is it is genuinely meant to be a discussion, not a panel or a speech. We actually have a few more people who are supposed to join on the screen. I hope in due course they will join as well. Or some people from the attendees might volunteer actually to put themselves up on the screen as well. Which means that in the first 10 to 15 minutes, I will ask you questions, Sandeep, as an anchor to you, more to set the stage, to set the context on the topic. But then it is driven primarily by Q&A that's going to come from all the people who are attending. And you should, of course, answer. Other people who are on the screen may answer as well. You can ask a question, other people can ask a question. So it is meant to be sort of an online version of if people were to be sitting around the table and asking questions. That's the intent.
Awesome.
What we do is that we pick a specific topic every time. And I say this every time, that this is not meant to be a rags to riches kind of a story. We were small, we became big. That's not the intent. We typically pick a functional topic. It could be pricing. It could be inside sales. It could be product management, whatever. The topic for today is on demand gen, and I will talk a little bit more about it in a short while. So before I do that, I would first love to introduce Sandeep to the rest of the audience here. So for everybody's benefit, I have had the pleasure of knowing Sandeep now for a very long time. I think 2010 is when we started working together back in my SAP days. Sandeep comes with a long experience at companies like Nokia, Microsoft, SAP, and now I wanted to use the word startup, but I don't think I can call Cvent a startup any longer. It's a large public company because you guys went public back in 2013 itself.
Yeah.
But needless to say, Sandeep has had the opportunity to work in many different sort of environments, SMB, enterprise, different countries, so India, but outside of India as well. Possibly every possible motion in demand gen, Sandeep has had exposure to. So delighted, Sandeep, that you are the guest today.
Thank you, Alok. Pleasure's mine.
So just to introduce the topic again, at least I find that when I work with startups, there is, of course, and actually not just startups, I would even argue when we were in public companies, Sandeep, a lot of the focus always is on sales.
Yep.
What are we delivering this month? What are we delivering this quarter? Right? I mean, all the drama that we go through at quarter ends or used to go through at quarter ends. I sometimes have felt that not an equal amount of attention is put on demand gen. Even though we all keep saying that your quarter is only as good as the pipe that you enter it with.
Right.
But somewhere the focus is not there on demand gen, even though we understand that that's as important, if not more important, than what we do on the sales side.
True.
The intent today is to actually go just dive a bit deeper. And Sandeep, as we do this, do bear in mind that a lot of the people on the call today are going to be early stage entrepreneurs. We are going to adopt that kind of a lens as we have the discussion today. But before I go any further, Sandeep, I think what will be useful is for you to introduce to people just in a literal line or two what Cvent does, but more importantly, what kind of customers do you target, particularly in terms of size, kinds of deals, because I think as you make comments on demand gen, it'll help people interpret your comments accordingly.
Sure. Okay, so Alok, we are kind of, I can say, one of the oldest cloud companies, so to say. We started off somewhere in 2000, 20 years been around. So we actually have always been a cloud company. And we have solutions or a platform, you can say, which provides solutions or a platform for a technology platform for events to manage events and to end-to-end event management, as well as on the hospitality side. So to the hotels. So planners who do events need our technology, and they also need to go to venues. So venues need technology, whether from rooming to business intelligence to transient and all this stuff. So group businesses. So we actually play in the B2B space, and we only play in the meetings and event space. We do not do bookings for individuals or consumers. So we manage the B2B space and in the meeting space. So basically a MICE industry, so to say.
Got it. Understood. And give us a sense of what size of customers, or is it a whole spectrum, and what kind of ACVs?
So it is a very interesting question. Actually, we cater to practically every segment. So from small businesses of a very, very small size, small business, mid-market segment to enterprise segment, our deals can vary from $2K to $1 million or a few $1 million. So we actually have the whole spectrum of space. And it's not pocketed into enterprise or pocketed into this thing. So we do massive amount of marketing across the board.
Wow. That's actually a pretty broad spectrum. So Sandeep, if I may actually begin with taking off from your 2K to 2 million kind of sort of now the range, would be just useful to understand from a demand gen perspective. How do you think of segmentation of these customers? Because I'm assuming that demand gen motion might be very different for these different segments. So help me understand, how do you segment these customers?
Yeah, so it all depends. We have our own segmentation in terms of, we have enterprise segment, mid-market segment, small business segment. That's one way to segment it. Then you also segment it from a perspective of, are we going after corporate, or we're going after non-profit segment. So those kind of, government segment or education segment. So we have segmented it that way. Then we also have segmentation in enterprise. When you go by verticals, right? So you can go into pharmaceutical, technology, those kind of segments. So it depends. Each segment has got sub-segmentation, right? So, but small business or mid-market business is primarily into corporate, government, education, non-profit, that kind of a segmentation.
Understand. Sorry, just to sort of drill on this maybe a little bit more. Hi, Abhinav, how are you?
Hi, Alok.
Yeah. So, Sandeep, going back, is there a particular, I guess where I was going was, I was thinking about segmentation from a demand gen motion perspective.
Okay.
In the sense that I'm making the assumption in certain segments you'll be inbound, in certain segments you'll be outbound, in certain segments it might be primarily being done by AEs and not by a demand gen team.
Yeah.
Also, if it has small accounts. So, is there any sort of rough segmentation that you think about when you put into these kinds of buckets?
Right. Okay. So I think let me step back for that, Alok, for a minute. So a lot of times, entrepreneurs or startups think of demand generation and qualified leads as one and the same thing, right? So in my mind, it is different, right? Qualified lead is down the funnel. So because everybody starts looking at, how many leads did you generate? How many did they got converted? And what happened, and how much could you hand off to sales and how much could they convert? That's a very lower segment of the funnel. Demand generation actually starts much before, right? You need to really start looking at it from a perspective of, what is the kind of audience that you're talking to? Who are the persona who are your influencer persona or business decision making personas? So how are you actually going after them? Are you educating them? What is the kind of awareness that you're creating? Are they willing to consider you, or they at least know of you? And then you bring them down the funnel to really get to a point where you start saying, okay, can I get a lead, and then can I qualify it, right? So our effort is actually both. I wouldn't say inbound and outbound specifically to a segment. It has to be surround sound, as I say. It depends on the startup side. When you call up, I think I would say once you have a market fit product, after that, you need to start thinking about how do you really get to market and start talking about your product and start getting first good customers. After that, you need to start thinking about scale. So first good customers will come through references, they'll come through, the outbound, because you will reach out to them with your proposition and all this stuff. But once you have got them in, after that, it is all about scale, right? So how do you really get that proposition out? And not everybody is willing to look at, is not looking for your solution. They probably have an intent, or they're even not, like, for example, HubSpot, right? I read a lot about a lot on HubSpot blogs and all that stuff. I'm not interested in buying HubSpot today, right? But there's a lot of work happening, awareness happening, and all this stuff happening. If I have to buy something in automation tomorrow, I might consider them. That's the intent time, right? So there's a whole cycle that you have to think about. So it's not about outbound or inbound. You have to have both. Depends where you are in your introduction of product and in the life cycle of your product. So you can't segment it based on, you can segment it based on the stage. If you're a very early starter, you will have to start with outbound, right? But once you start becoming a little bit higher on the scale, you have to live with both. Now, it depends how much is the mix. That's a separate issue. But initially, definitely everybody starts with an outbound, and then they have to start going towards inbound, which is essential level.
Got it. So let's talk a little bit about inbound, Sandeep, because I think as far as the demand gen motion from India has happened in the past, most companies actually end up using either SEO, SEM, or they end up using content marketing to be able to build a funnel, particularly because outbound, if I may say, has been a bit hard. And the theory has been that, look, if you are particularly targeting the SMB segment, and if it's an existing category, then inbound should work well, right?
Yep.
So given, I guess, what you guys do at Cvent, I'm curious to understand where has actually inbound worked well for you guys?
Okay. So I think I would put it this way, that when you have to create a reach, as I said, when you have to create a reach, you need to create an inbound strategy, right? Because you have to create a thought leadership, you have to create a category, you have to start talking about that. And when people start searching for you, you should be available, right? So there is, for example, you create a white paper, right? And now you want to distribute that white paper to a broader audience, right? So you need to create a thought leadership article or a thought leadership content, and then you have to use tools like Path Factory or other kind of tools where you can, content syndication platforms, where you actually put where people of your audience actually go and consume that content. That's where the intent starts getting, you start taking people down the journey of various kinds of content journey that you have created. So you have a awareness content, then you have a consideration content. So you keep, funneling them into that content, and then you bring them down into a level where you can throw in a bottom of the funnel offer to really say, okay, now that you have gone through this whole journey, we are pretty sure that you are ready to consider something to buy or have a conversation. So content and inbound is synonymous, because you need to create a good content to engage people.
Yeah.
And then you have to be able to talk to them at the right moment. So you need to start scoring them. You need to have the right persona, and you need to say, hey, this is my cutoff. Once you have engaged so much with me on my content or binged my content to this level, I think you're ready to have a conversation. So that's where we have got some decent traction. I'll give you some examples. We created dummy books. Dummies books. Okay. So we said dummies for virtual event, dummies for hybrid event, dummies for enterprise meetings management, right? So, and we distributed that content very widely. So even if somebody who was not actively considering us for platform, they wanted to know, for example, when the virtual became so prominent in last year, everybody wanted to know how to do a virtual event, right? So we quickly turned around a content called how to do virtual event, dummies for virtual event, right? And it's a collaboration with Dummies, Willy's book. Everybody knows about Dummies, right? So we widely distributed that, and people wanted to know, hey, and we were number one in every search. We were number one in every possible thinking that people were doing about virtual events. And then we took them down the journey and made them offers, made them some training offers, how to do that. Once you have consumed and you got interested, I'm going to give you some free training, how to do it and all that stuff. And then bring them down the funnel and say, hey, now here is an offer. Let's have a chat, a demo or a price offer or whatever. So you need to start engaging from an inbound perspective to be able to get people interested and then bring them down the funnel. That has worked beautifully for us in the COVID year, I can tell you.
Got it. Thanks, Sandeep. I want to open it up, but I just want to quickly introduce Abhinav also, who is on the screen. So Abhinav, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah.
Great to have you here in your new avatar.
Yeah.
Always good to see you. Maybe Abhinav, just as a line of introduction, will be great if you can tell people what does DataWeave do?
Sure.
And again, what kind of customers do you target?
Sure. So thank you, Alok. It was a surprise to see myself on the panel. Yeah. So very quickly, I'm actually an ex-entrepreneur. I was running a startup called SparrowSense AI Supervisor, which has recently been acquired by DataWeave. So DataWeave works in the space of e-commerce and brand competitive intelligence. So basically, we crawl, match, and analyze e-commerce and brand data and help brands and e-commerce better sell, right? So the kind of customers we target are the really large e-commerce players of the world, someone like Amazon, Flipkart, Walmart's, right? And top brands, be it Adidas, Pumas, right? So these are the kind of customers that we are looking to reach out to. So I was listening to Sandeep. So one of the questions that we at DataWeave are currently evaluating, right? Which is how to know first when to switch from outbound to inbound, and how do you change that internally, all right? How do you bring that change inside your sales and marketing team to make that switch, right? Every SaaS startup starts with outbound sales, but how do you make that switch? That's one of the question I'm curious to have Sandeep see on, and other entrepreneurs might also kind of chip in.
So go ahead, Sandeep.
Sure. So I think, as I said, at some point of time when you are, everybody starts outbound because that's the easiest way to do it, right? So some people, some customers, you know who are your ideal audience, right? So when you're starting off the product, you of course reach out to them, and then you of course create a database and you start sending emails or phones and all that stuff, right? So that's the easiest, fastest, cheapest way to start getting your product out there. But I think once you have got the fit, as Alok said, the market fit, now you've got that what you really wanted to take to market, you have got it, and your people are responding in a positive sense. What you really wanted to convey, they are taking it. Or sometimes I have seen that you wanted to take a proposition, but people have given back a feedback and said, well, I see a better value from this same product in this way, right? So you tune your strategy accordingly, and you tune your messaging accordingly, and then start finding the right personas, and then you get the right. First, you get the market fit of the product, then you get the perfect fit for who's your buyer. Sometimes you assume CEO is your buyer, but maybe not. Maybe COO is your buyer. Maybe a marketer is your buyer. So you need to get market demand, and then you also need to know who's you're going to buy. So that is the journey. Once you've got both of them right? That's the time when you should start thinking about inbound, because that's when you know which platforms are these guys going to go and look at content. Then you know where to syndicate your content, what kind of content you need to create. Because if you are targeting a marketer, then you'll not target the same content to a CEO or a CIO, right? So if your primary target audience is CMO and you've got it fitted, then you have that media plan or thinking or content that you can throw it into the market. So I think that's the cusp point in my mind where you have the market fit of the product and the audience you got the right audience or perfect persona, I would say. That's when you need to start thinking about inbound, in my mind.
I just wanted to make a note for everybody in the audience. Feel free to raise your hand, and we'll be happy to actually bring you on the screen here to ask your questions. If any of you actually have been involved in demand gen or are entrepreneurs who have seen these cycles, you should just feel free to be on the screen regardless. So don't be shy. As I said, this is meant to be a discussion. So you should come here, and or you can also put your questions on this Q&A board, and I will be reading at least the relevant ones. Those which are relevant to demand gen is the one that I'm going to read through as well. But in the meantime, we do have someone joining here. So if you could quickly introduce yourself and maybe ask your question.
Hey, hi Sandeep.
Hi.
So my question was very simple. In terms of outbound, when you are kind of breaking into a new market, right? So we have customers in India and in Southeast Asia. These are beachhead customers, but now we are planning to go into the US and the UK market, right? And
oh, we lost him.
Yeah,
we lost him. Okay, we will let him answer his or ask his question later again. In the meantime, I'm going to read one of the questions that has been put on the board here, which is that if inbound works fine, and this is Sandeep addressed to you, and generates a good top of the funnel for us. So for the person who's asking this question, what impact will outbound have? Will this increase significantly our lead gen? I mean, I guess they are asking us, why should we need to do it, and what stage should we think about doing it if inbound is working well for them?
Yeah, so I think it's a very good question. So see, what you can do in the inbound is elicit, the interest, but you will have to at some point of time create a touch point where you are not only dependent 100% on the inbound, because it takes time. Outbound will be able to get the rubber hits the road when you really have a chat with the customer, right? So I think that's where the cusp point is. You have the interest generated. Now you need to really also try to reach out to the customer. So it's not mutually exclusive to each other. If you start looking at mutually exclusive, then the lead time to convert will increase. So you need to have the strategy, both of the strategies together, so that you are able to crash the lead times of conversions.
And let me just add to Sandeep's comment. And sorry, I know you got dropped off, so we'll allow you to ask your question soon again. But in the meantime, you're answering one more question.
Sure. So, sorry about that.
Again, I don't have the experience that Sandeep has in demand gen, but one thing I've often found is that if, let's say, you're in a category which is well known,
yeah,
and let's say you're targeting customers which are not very large, and for the sake of putting some numbers around it, let's say you're targeting customers in the $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 ACV range itself. Inbound may actually work quite well up to a certain scale. In fact, I find that even in the 10 to 20 million ARR range, which of course to Sandeep will look like a tiny number, but I know that for most startups, 10 to 20 million ARR is not a trivial number. Yeah. But even until that scale, I find that inbound scales pretty well. One of the benefits of inbound is that it is intent-based. People who are coming to you, you know that they're interested in this, which is actually a harder path on the outbound side more often. So at least I've found that outbound, sometimes while the process may be known, but the conversion and the time it takes to convert is actually higher. So one of the good ways to think about it is that, number one, as Sandeep said, you will not be able to build a company with just inbound. You will have to have outbound. And given that you need to learn outbound, you better start early, because it will take you some time to even learn and get that right, number one. Number two, outbound may be slightly more relevant as you go to slightly higher ACVs. So as ACV begins to go, and Sandeep disagrees with me, I see. So it'll be good to get his disagreement on this pretty soon. But as ACVs go up, particularly for larger customers, I find that inbound doesn't work that well. So you will have to create an outbound channel at that stage. But in practice, I've found it to take some time to happen, and therefore starting early is very critical.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fair point, Alok. I think particularly in the enterprise segment, when you're trying to get into the enterprise segment, you need to do a lot more outbound. You're right, because you need to really educate customers of multiple profiles.
Yeah.
And you have to bring them on the same page at the same time, because you are trying to get them to align to your sales cycle, right? Therefore, your outbound increases, right? So you need to have a buying council, for example. There are 7 people sitting in the buying council. So 2 of them are consuming or binging your content wherever you put it, but 5 of them are not. So how do you reach them? So that is where your outbound starts becoming very prominent. So you have to bring them on the same page.
Very true. Given that Vipul is back, Vipul, if you want to repeat your question, please go ahead. Okay, I think Vipul either cannot hear us. So I'm going to take a question which has come.
I can, sorry, I was on mute.
Go ahead, Vipul.
Sorry. Thanks, Alok. Thanks for giving me the chance again. So Sandeep, my question was very simple, right? You do not have a marketing support and you're breaking into a new market like the US with no reference customers. What kind of, and also, you have to educate the customer about, the international clients that you have, which they might not be aware of. So, a lot of times we have seen that, yes, they do kind of engage, but later in the sales cycle, they will drop off because of, you guys are not present in the US, standard questions that, a SaaS company faces. So any inputs there of, any particular strategy that has worked for you in past in terms of breaking into a new market or a new vertical where you do not have a lot of marketing support?
Yeah. So I think Alok had that question at some point of time. I would say trade shows work beautifully.
Yeah, but in the scenario of COVID,
I mean, I'm just generally saying, not in the post-COVID or COVID scenario, but generally in a new market, trade shows are the best routes to go.
Okay.
That's where you create relationships, and that's where the rubber hits the road, and you start talking to the real stuff to people. Right? So now, if you're talking about a COVID scenario where you cannot have, this thing, there the industry. There are virtual seminars happening and the virtual industry platforms who are doing it, doing the trade shows, which are very virtual, right? I think that could be a good way to start. The other way to start is most likely the industrial associations. If you can actually create a relationship into the industry associations to where your segment belongs, and if you can do some kind of a digital route to reach, through the advertisement or through the newsletters that these industrial associations have, if you can insert yourself there, you could start introducing your brand. Because if nobody knows you, right, then you don't have a physical presence. Nobody knows your brand. Then you need to have some way to start showing up in where the customer goes or consumes content, right?
Okay.
So you have to find a way where they are going. But everybody is going somewhere right now, right? So wherever they are going, that's the place you have to place your content, and if possible, get a slot on demo.
Okay.
Right? Wherever possible, get a slot on demo.
I'm curious for Abhinav to answer this question because, I know, Sandeep, you're answering partly from a large company perspective. I know that Abhinav has gone through the process of trying to build a pipeline for getting manufacturing customers from US.
Yeah.
Right? Abhinav, will be interesting to know, when you were doing this, did you face the same issue and how did you overcome it?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's a huge struggle to get initial customers, especially when you don't have any presence in that geography and in that vertical, right? So I think for a very early stage startup, the only trick that works is to hustle, right? And hustle can have all the flavors, right? One of the things that really worked for us was to find references, find people that you might know. I use my IIT Delhi background. I use my BCG network. I use my investors. I used any entrepreneur I could hassle to give me a connect to the client wanted to get to, right? And I think this is the approach that can only work to get initial set of clients. Getting initial set of clients is the most difficult, I think, step in the journey for startup, and you have to use all your creativity in finding that early customers, right? So that
it's the same thing that when you start a company, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, a new market entry is no different than starting a new company.
Yeah.
To be honest, right? Nobody believes in your product. You believe in your product. You believe in your proposition. But a lot of people will have, they already are sitting in a comfort zone. They are already using something else. To Abhinav's point, if you can get references in any way or get inroads to have a conversation. I think the most important part is to crack through the maze and get to a conversation. Yeah. Right? If you can get that demo done, if you can get that demo done to the right person, whatever way that you can get entry into that, that's the best way to do it.
Just another small point. One good thing that is happening across industries is that every large enterprise client is actually eager to associate themselves with startups, right? So every large enterprise will have some other kind of startup program. I think it's a good point to get initial inroads, and at least, as Sandeep said, to get initial demos with the client, right? And so we actually managed to get a couple of clients using the startup programs of these large manufacturers. So that's another route that you should definitely give it a shot.
Okay, one follow-up question to Sandeep. Sandeep, what do you think about a partner-first approach of breaking into a market where you don't have field sales teams and traveling now is really difficult? So we came to a conclusion that let's go partner first and make our partners successful and get tied up with smaller consultants who consult in digital marketing and work with marketplaces, and then try to get demos or stuff like that. Have you tried this approach in the past where you have kind of used the partner network to get the few initial customers and then onboard? Once you get a few first try logos in any market, it becomes much more easier.
Yeah, Vipul, to be honest, even in Cvent, when we started off coming into Asia market about 3-4 years back, right? And most of the markets except for Singapore, we entered through partner network. So we had the partners who we, but in the partner story, the biggest thing that you have to do is sales enablement.
Yeah.
You have to give them absolutely every possible support, from a collaterals to trainings to solution support to technical support and everything. They are dependent on you, right? Yeah. So they use them as the last mile to go and connect the dots and maybe implement if required. But everything else you will have to do.
Yeah.
Because they're not prepared to do it. They don't have the expertise to do it. So you'll have to do the heavy lifting on the other side.
Yeah. Also, the partner success part also plays very important, right? A partner needs to generate some sort of revenue from you as well. That is when he'll start taking you seriously.
Absolutely. So partner in general, Vipul, is a fact that it's the business. It's a business for partners as it is for you. So if it is not profitable business, the partner will not invest in it.
Yeah.
So partnership in itself is they have to make money.
So Vipul, I'll add one more comment and I want to go to the next question. A lot of questions have come on the board here as well. I have a slightly contrarian view. See, when Sandeep is talking about using partners in Asia, do remember that the company was public in 2013.
Yeah.
Right? Cvent is a leader in that space. They have a brand in that space. If you are a startup in early stages, trying to go to a geography like US, actually, I don't think a partner-led approach will work in 90% cases. And the reason is, in general, you can outsource to partners a recipe that you have built. You can't actually ask them to build a recipe for you. They are not in the business of creating a market for you. You first have to create the market for yourself. You can begin to use partners once there is some motion, once there is some success. There are some examples. They know what's the recipe to sell. They know what support they can get from you. At early stage, these partnerships rarely work out.
Okay.
And when I use the word early, I mean, let me just also put some bound to it. Otherwise, because early is a very misleading word. I think for the first $5 to $10 million ARR, you should assume you are on your own. Even if you go to partners, you are better off going to small partners and not the likes of Accenture and TCSs. Because remember, these guys have got $5 to $10 million quarterly P&Ls. What you do is a line item that doesn't show up anywhere on their P&Ls. They have no mind share. So you will have to.
I think I'll probably add to that. So I was taking Vipul's question on market expansion and not a market entry.
Yeah.
To be honest, you mentioned to me going into a new market when I was assuming that it is market expansion strategy that you're asking about. But if you're talking about a market entry into a country, into a continent like Americas, which is going to be your largest market by far, I don't think that the market entry to that kind of a market should be through partners, right? Because that is your bread and butter, right? I mean, if that is going to be your always the biggest market ever, right, in your whole strategy, then you have to be there. It's better to hire somebody locally if required than trying through the partners in a primary market of yours.
Sorry,
generally is good for expansion.
Sorry, I will have to move on because there are a lot of people who have asked questions and we only have 23 minutes. Thank you. So one question that has come from two different people, one anonymous and one from Sri of Factors.ai, which is that, can you talk a little bit about what is the MarTech stack that you use, right? And particularly if you are a younger startup, let's say you are a startup at 1 to 2 million ARR, that's it. What are the must-have marketing tools which you think actually can significantly enhance your demand generation effectiveness?
Interesting. So I think I would put it this way. It's like it's a very fancy question that everybody asks me. So I'll give you a context. I use some 65 different technologies in marketing here.
65?
Yes.
Wow.
So if you really ask me, the market tech stack, that's how we have developed. It took me 24 hours to pivot to virtual when COVID hit us, right? So that's the kind of preparedness that we had. But does that really mean that everybody needs to have that kind of a preparedness? The answer is no, right? So it's like you have a dish and you want to start a restaurant. You don't need to have a fancy 5-star kitchen, right? So what you really need is the basics. So if you are less than $1 million, you don't need actually a marketing tech stack, right? You can actually live with very simple Excel, simple database, simple MailChimp kind of solutions. But once you start growing, Alo, you said $1 or $2 million, that's when you should start thinking about investing into a few things. To be honest, first would be a CRM, right? It could be any CRM, right? So which fits your bill. Now everything is on the cloud. The second, once you start doing that, the next part could be your automation. So marketing automation, any of the marketing automation tools from Marketo to Lockwood to HubSpot to whatever, right? You start growing further and you start doing a lot of inbound and a lot of hits start coming onto your sites and everything. You need to invest something into analytics, which is like Adobe Analytics or Google Analytics or something of that sort. After that, I think it's all about what is your scale and how are you going about it. I think the basic 3 things to invest in the early startup stage would be a CRM, an automation tool, and some kind of an analytics. I think beyond that is all dependent on how you grow.
Got it. I will take a question from Ajit Singh, which is that, so I'm just going to read it out for both Sandeep and Abhinav, feel free to answer. There are ways to track sales efficiency in the entire GTM model. So typically LTV over CAC, etc. These are examples of how people measure. Is there a way to track effectiveness of the demand generation team? How do we know we are doing a good job in DG?
Abhinav, you want to take it?
No, actually, I'm also curious to have answer to this question because it has always been a puzzle, right? That you keep on generating good content, you keep on investing in your marketing campaigns, right? But you actually are always confused that whether all these efforts are really paying or not. So that's a question I also kind of ponder about. So I would love to have your.
So see, I think the fundamental part of the ROI is that so how do I put it? So what is your ACV and what is your cost per lead? That's the simplest example, right? If your cost per lead justifies your ACV and then beyond that an LTV, right? And that justification will depend upon company to company, your cost factors and all that stuff. But the denominator would be the cost per lead, right? So that is where you will have to start doing the balancing act, that what is the channel that you're using and what kind of a spend that you're doing to get a lead. And then from lead, what is the conversion factors, right? So if you are acquiring a customer, let's say $500 is an acquisition cost and your ACV is $5,000, right? But your churn is 80%. Would you want to spend that $500? But if your LTV is, let's say $200,000 and your cost of acquisition is $500, would you do that? The answer is probably yes. I'm just using metaphorically. So depends upon your mix of the business, but the common denominator would be cost.
But Sandeep, are there any thumb rules? So I will take a different example for sales.
Yeah.
Right. In general, if you look at SMB to mid-market oriented companies coming out from India for global markets, by and large, you can say that CAC and LTV, ACV over CAC should be more than one in that segment, by and large. As you go to enterprise, that actually ends up becoming half very often.
Yeah.
But that's also because there is a lot more expansion revenue in those accounts later, and they're far stickier. But is there any such thumb rule of on a cost per lead and ACV?
I would say, I mean, there's no industry. I mean, there is Serious Decisions does a lot of a lot of papers on this and everything, but I haven't come across somebody who gives a very authoritative view on that. But I would say anything between 25 to 35x is a good way to look at it.
Got it. Interesting. And when you calculate the cost per lead, you would include all your marketing costs?
Everything.
Including people, program, everything?
Everything.
Wow. I'm not sure if there are many companies that meet your benchmark from India, Sandeep, I must say, but that's an interesting number that you...
Yeah, I mean, look at it this way, Alok. Let me give you another way to look at it. So what's your normal, and anybody can probably answer here, what's your normal SaaS company in India spending on a marketing as a percentage of revenue?
I would imagine that's certainly 10%, if not 20%.
In this range.
That clearly gives you 10x. Right? So if you really, a very world-class stuff would take you about 25, 30 once you mature, right? And you have already created a scale, right? That's where you will end up.
Got it. I'm going to take another question from Shri, because I suspect that many other people might have this question, which is, how do you do marketing attribution? So how do you look at impact of content, events, and all the different sort of, plethora of tactics that one use? So how does one know? So one is to measure at the level of cost per lead and ACV. But as you begin to drill down, how do you know which tactic is being effective? Because how do you attribute?
Yeah, so we have our own attribution models, Alok. we have created I can today say with a lot of confidence, every tactic, even every asset that we create, we know what is the attribution to the, or influence to the bookings. But there are tools available in the market. To be honest, one of the tools that is available is called Visible, which helps create a lot of, which has inbuilt models that you can leverage, and you can actually use that. But there are, you will have to start putting some basic logics of your own and see where the, for example, in database, just by creating a database and then using the database for an email, then doing a demo, then doing a webinar, and then doing a last mile is your, offer or whatever. So you create a decay model, right? And you say database is 5% because that's the first one. And then you start creating a decay model. So that way you can create the very preliminary algorithms for attribution. But now, as I said, just like AI and everything else, you have tools available. So leverage some tools if it is so important for you.
Understand. So I'm going to take a question here from Ashwin, which says, when targeting a limited set of large enterprises and marketing to them. So he said, for example, account-based marketing. What is the journey from low intent lead to high intent lead? In your experience, what are the most important touch points in this journey? Who should be held responsible for these touch points? So again, I don't fully understand it. Sandeep, would love for you to comment.
Okay, so disclaimer, it's a black box. Everybody has his own journey. Okay, so but one thing that I can tell for sure is that ABM is one tactic where marketing and sales are 100% partners, right? This is not possible to be done without sales 100% being partner in the tactic, because you need to create an account plan, right? You really need to map the buying council. You really need to know the influencers. You need not only the influencer, but also the gatekeepers, right? So you really have to have a clear account plan, and then you need to have, so I'll give you an example. So let's say one Fortune 100 company, whatever company's name that you say you are going after, and there is a lot of content that is being consumed by company X from Europe and from America's one part of the America and the other part of the America and Canada's, right? How do you know who in that company is actually consuming your content, right? And how do you really pinpoint to them? So you do an IP-based, targeting, and you come to a point where you say, okay, these are the likely 5 people in Denver who are looking for my product, because these are the personas who will be potentially interested. So you need to marry the database, the intent journey, and then talk to your sales, what is the account plan of Denver's office of this particular company, and then come back and say, okay, these are the likely people, and what are you going to target them with? Are they in the stage of demoing? Are they in the stage of influencing? So it's a very, very scientific way of doing it. The interesting part is that it is worth the effort because the numbers are big. Generally, enterprises are 6 figures numbers or higher, kind of stuff that you're going after. So it's worth the effort, but it's a lot of patience and a lot of very detailed account plan. And to answer the question, who's accountable? I think mostly sales leads it.
Got it. I want to welcome Ramakant. I know Ramakant, sorry, you dropped out a couple of times. That's why I couldn't give you a chance to ask the question earlier, but please go ahead with your question.
Thank you so much, sir. So basically, we have started a startup named Rewire, and it is on the lines of basically demand forecasting and trade promotion intelligence. It's basically a SaaS platform for revenue optimization, basically, if we can say that. So currently we are in talks with many VCs, including Elevation Capital and January Capital and all. So one of the feedback that we are getting is that ideal customer should be the large FMCGs. Okay. But currently we are getting this small D2C brands as the customer. So our aim is that once we get these D2C brands, then we will value it, leverage it to get the big customers. But investors say that like you don't have those big FMCG brands in your portfolio right now. So what should be the ideal way of getting those big customers? Because like it is a ladder, no? It is a ladder. Like once I'll get small customer, then only the big customers will trust us. So how to go about it, sir?
Is that a question to me? Alok can probably answer it better than I do.
Abhinav, you want to take that?
So Ramakant, I think the first suggestion would be to never think about your business based on what investors think. Right? So if investors are suggesting you to go after FMCG, you should take it with a pinch of salt. Just I think you should be first be concerned about what you really want to build. I think that's the
correct.
That's the absolutely first point, right? Second, I think for startups, the first very important factor is what vision do you have, right? So if your vision as the kind of company you want to build a product for large FMCG company, right? If that's ultimately your vision, I think you should not you should be very, very focused towards FMCG customers, right? And again, hustle your way to those FMCG brands. As I mentioned, leverage your references, leverage investors, leverage other entrepreneurs who might be selling to those FMCG brands. Leverage all the startup programs that those FMCG brands might do. If the ultimate focus is to go after those FMCG brands, it might not really help to even add the D2C brands that you might be getting early on, right? So it doesn't really help. It's just a distraction, perhaps. If ultimately your goal is to build a product for FMCG. That would be my 2 cents, but I would also love to hear what Alok has to say.
So Ramakant, again, I don't want to comment on what other people have told you. But first of all, it is very common for startups to initially start with smaller customers and go to larger customers.
Yes, sir.
I mean, very often you have to walk before you run. Because if you have to run, you may never run. That can be sometimes. I think the underlying question that you should ask is that by going to a customer which is smaller, if they don't have the problem, first of all, then it's not worth going to. Even if they have a problem, but that problem is so different that you are actually going to build a different solution altogether to serve them. Then to Abhinav's point, you actually want to go here, but you are now going in this direction, makes no sense.
Correct.
But if it's just a question of size being different, then I think there is nothing wrong with going to smaller customers first. Build a basic muscle. And as you described it, a ladder, I think I have seen so many companies. And I will give you my favorite example, which I keep repeating all the time, but Whatfix, when we invested, they were doing $1,000 per customer per year.
Okay.
Today, they regularly do deals of $100,000, $200,000, $300,000. Happens all the time for them. I remember that when we put the first big proposal, this was to Schlumberger. They declined because the proposal was too small. We put a very small price.
Correct.
And I don't think if they wanted to tackle someone like Schlumberger on day zero, they could have done it. They were just not prepared for it. But that doesn't mean that the work that they did in the first few years in working with smaller customers was a waste of time. I don't think it was.
Exactly.
It was a way of refining their product further to be able to get to larger customers eventually. But at least it needs to be the same direction. If you end up taking a completely different direction, then I would rethink about that.
Yes, sir.
And again, I don't know enough to be able to say whether D2C fits in the same direction or doesn't fit in that direction.
So basically, sir, currently D2C, like our models are such that basically the size does not matter for that. So currently what we discovered was that there was a lot of traction from D2C customers. Okay. So we thought that if the traction is very ready, then why should we not go for it? But the thing was that while we are going for it, then we are not getting the big tickets basically. So my question was that like people have questioned us for our ICP basically. So people have given us a feedback that your ICP is not clear, your vision is not clear, basically all those things. So should I ignore those D2C brands which are ready to work with me? So basically.
Ramakant, as Abhinav already answered, in the end, all VCs, including myself, for sure, we are so far removed from your business that we will be very challenging.
Correct.
You are close to your business, you are close to your solution, you are close to your customers.
Correct.
You are in the best position to make some of those decisions. So
Sure.
listen to everybody, but in the end, do what your conviction tells you to do. So that is important.
Correct.
If you are okay, Ramakant, I'm going to move on to one or two more questions.
Definitely, sir. Definitely. That helped a lot. Thank you so much.
So I'm going to take another question from Shri, because I think this is a question which many people face. And Sandeep, would love for you to comment on this. Once you pass a lead to sales, does it become a black box? In other words, can you easily track all the sales activities, metrics back to your ongoing campaigns? How do you do it currently?
Yeah, so pleasantly in Cvent, we can. But you're right, in most cases, it becomes a black box. But here again, it's important so I'll tell you how we do it. Every lead that we create, and it is a very rudimentary way of doing it, okay? So I'm just giving you another perspective of a very complex MarTech, but also doing a very rudimentary stuff, okay? So everything that we create, every lead that we give is a task to sales. So it is in the Cvent system or a CRM system, it goes as a task, okay? Not as a lead, as a task. So every task needs to be called, okay? So there has to be an activity that has to be done, and there is a timeline and a metrics behind it. So sales management is very supportive of that, and it's a very tightly knit process. So every lead or MQL, so to say, is a task for sales, and sales needs to call in certain times, and otherwise they need to go and junk it, right? And that junk, we pick it back, analyze, refunnel if required, but everything needs to be called. Now, can I say 100% is called? No. Is 90% called? Probably yes. 85, definitely. So if 85% of your effort, you know something happened to that, I think that's good enough in the current times.
Understand. Given that we have 1.5 minutes, I'm going to squeeze one more question from Krishna here. Sandeep, you mentioned about white papers. What are the best ways to distribute the content? And I will stop. I'll not read the rest of the question, but in general, it's one thing to create content. How do you distribute content in general?
Every possible channel, guys. If you have invested into a content that you really believe in, white papers are generally thought leadership articles and all that stuff, right? So every possible channel at your disposal, right from emails to collaborative partners to digital channels, you need to create the reach for them, right? So you have to, and even more important in sales conversations. So when you're picking up a conversation, you need to bring that, if you are in a fix and people are not having that conversation, offer a white paper. So it's a good sales enablement tool. Definitely all marketing channels. Investment is worth creating the reach.
But is there something that works better than others? I mean, whether you do it through LinkedIn, to other publications, how do you sort of make sure that it's reaching out to?
If it is your own effort, then LinkedIn and sales conversations are the best channels. But if it is through somebody, for example, you're creating a Forrester, or you're creating it with some analyst firm or something of that sort, or some industry body, then use that channel because that's more credible, right? So use those channels in that situation.
Got it. Guys, I know we are at 7 o'clock and we always promise that we will end on time. So apologies, because I think on today's session, probably twice the number of questions are still there compared to what we have asked already and which have gone unanswered. So my apologies for that. So hopefully we'll probably do another session on demand then some other time, because people just had a lot of questions on this topic. But I want to thank everyone who attended today. I want to thank Sandeep, Abhinav for being there as well today. So thank you so much until we collect for our 10th session next time.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Alok.
Thank you, Alok. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Sandeep.
Bye.